Most people think they become directors the day someone hires them. I don't believe that anymore. Looking back over my career, I can point to the exact moment I became a director. The strange part of it is, it had nothing to do with directing. No one handed me a script, no producer offered me a movie, nobody gave me permission. It happened in a parking lot in Pasadena, staring at a camera I didn't know how to assemble. That afternoon changed my career. More importantly, it changed the way I understood what it means to be an artist. Hello, if you're new here, my name is Miguel Parga. I'm the best-selling author of What They Didn't Teach You in Film School and Make Your Own Movies. For nearly 2 decades, I've taught filmmakers how to create stories that matter. Lately, I've realized something. Most people think this is a channel about filmmaking, and it is. But filmmaking has always been an excuse to talk about something else. Because every time you make a movie, you're also making yourself. Every project asks the same question. Who are you becoming while you create this? That's what I call the director within. And this story is where that philosophy began. In 2001, I was working at ABC News in New York. I've been there almost 10 years. I was part of the special events crew, the people who cover the biggest stories in the country. So when something major had happened, my beeper went off, and no matter what I was doing, I had to go into the studio. It was exciting. It was stable. It paid well. From the outside, I had a good career. Then September 11 happened. I spent months covering one of the most devastating events in American history. And when it was over, I realized something. I didn't want to spend the rest of my life documenting tragedy. I wanted to tell stories. So I left New York, moved to California, started over. On paper, it looked like a step backwards. I went from a union job at ABC to sitting on a tiny cubicle in a Universal lot, translating Coca-Cola and Verizon commercials into Spanish. Not exactly the glamorous Hollywood career I had envisioned. But looking back, I wasn't there to translate commercials. I was there to become someone else. I just didn't know it yet. So one afternoon, I overheard a conversation in the next office. There was a red carpet event in Pasadena for the People's Choice Awards. NBC needed a camera crew immediately, but the problem was every crew was already out shooting. There was nobody left. Before I had time to think, I heard a voice say, "I'll do it." And then I realized the voice was mine. The truth is, I never covered a red carpet in my life. I had no idea what I was doing. But something inside me answered before my fear had a chance to speak. He handed me a camera, some sound equipment, gas money, and I drove to Pasadena wondering whether I just destroyed my career. When I arrived, I opened the camera case. My heart stopped. The camera wasn't assembled. It was in pieces. Lenses, viewfinder, battery mount cables, parts everywhere. I never put that camera together before in my life. Today, you pull out your phone, watch a tutorial, get it done. But back then, there was no YouTube, no Google, no rescue. The announcers said the celebrities would be arriving in minutes. I could feel panic taking over. And then something happened that I've never forgotten. A sentence appeared in my mind. Not, "I hope I can do this." Not, "Maybe I can do this." I said to myself, "This is who I am, and I can figure this out." That sentence changed my life. Because it wasn't confidence. Confidence comes and goes. It was identity. I had decided what kind of person I was. I was the kind of person who figured things out. Once that decision was made, the fear didn't disappear. It just stopped being in charge. So I called a friend in New York who owned the same camera. He talked me through assembling it over the phone. 20 minutes later, I pushed my way through the crowd, covered the red carpet, shot the event, drove back to Universal. When I handed over the footage, someone said, "Well, we'll have to find an editor." And without thinking, I heard the same voice, my voice, say, "I'll do it." So I cut the piece. NBC loved it. A month later, my boss handed me another assignment. He said, this Fisher Price commercial needs to be shot. I asked, who's directing? He looked at me and said, you are. I've been in Los Angeles less than 5 months. I had my first paid directing gig. But here's the thing. That wasn't the moment I became a director. That had happened weeks earlier in that parking lot with that camera and pieces. People love to tell stories like this and end with the lesson, say yes before you're ready. But I don't think that's the lesson. Lots of people say yes, then panic, then quit. The lesson isn't saying yes. The lesson is deciding who you are before life decides for you. Because every opportunity eventually asks the same question. Who are you? Not what do you know? Not how talented are you? Who are you when things stop going according to plan? Who are you when you're terrified? Who are you when everyone else is more experienced than you? That's the real audition. That afternoon taught me something I've carried into every part of my career. Writing scripts, teaching, directing actors, making movies, writing books. Whenever something feels bigger than me, I remember that parking lot. I remind myself that my job isn't to know everything. My job is to become the type of person who can figure it out. That's a very different way to live. I think too many artists spend years waiting until they know enough, waiting until they have better equipment, waiting until someone chooses them, waiting until they finally feel like directors. But no one can give you an identity. That's an inside job. You become a director long before anyone calls you one. First, you direct your choices, then your habits, then your fears. Eventually, your movies begin to reflect the person you've become. That's why I call this philosophy the director within. Because every film has two directors, the one making the movie and the one quietly directing the life of the person behind the camera. The second one is the one that matters most. If this idea resonated with you, I'd love to ask you something. Think back to your own creative life. Was there a moment when you stopped waiting for permission? When you realized no one was coming to choose you? Because nobody is. Let me know in the comments. I read them all, and I genuinely love hearing your stories. And if you'd like to go deeper into the way I teach storytelling, download my free storytelling starter kit. It's where I introduce the principles that eventually became the director within. And until next time, don't just direct your movies. Direct your